The night was quiet on the lonely planet of Valora. The stars above looked cold, like frozen eyes watching from the sky. The wind whispered through the ruins of a forgotten city, carrying dust, ash, and silence. In the middle of that silence worked a human engineer named Ethan Cross. Ethan had been sent there by the Human Alliance to repair an old medical outpost. He had no team, no friends, only the hum of machines and the echo of his own breathing. The war had ended months ago, but peace never truly came. Valora was one of those worlds destroyed by both sides, humans and Trillari. The ground was scarred, the air thin, and hope almost gone. Ethan spent his days fixing broken generators and rewriting old medical codes. He told himself it was just another mission, another job to survive, but deep inside, he felt empty. Every night he looked at the stars and wondered if the war had killed something inside him too. That night, as he sat by the dim light of his datapad, he heard something strange. At first he thought it was the wind, a low, trembling sound, but then he froze. It wasn't the wind. It was a cry, weak and painful, echoing from the darkness outside. Ethan stood up slowly, his heart pounding. No human lived near this place, and animals were long dead from radiation. He grabbed his scanner and stepped out into the cold. The sky was black and the air burned against his skin. The cry came again, closer this time, like that of a baby gasping for life. He followed the sound through the ruins until he saw something moving behind a broken wall. It was a figure, small, shaking, covered in torn fabric. Ethan lifted his flashlight, and his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't human. It was a Trillari woman, her silver skin dim under the light. She was kneeling on the ground, clutching a small bundle in her arms. The child inside the bundle was crying softly. Weak and hungry, the woman looked up at Ethan, her large black eyes full of fear and pain. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Human, please, help me." Ethan took a step back, his mind spinning. The Trillari, the enemy, he had fought against them. He had lost friends because of them. Now one was here, begging him for mercy. The woman coughed, her breath shallow. "My milk. It has dried up," she said, pressing the tiny infant close to her chest. "He will die if I cannot feed him." Ethan hesitated. He knew the Galactic Law. No human could offer biological aid to alien life. It was forbidden, punishable by death. But as he looked at the baby, small and trembling, he felt his chest tighten. The infant's skin was pale blue, veins glowing faintly under the surface. It cried softly, too weak to scream. Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, compassion. He knelt down, trying to speak calmly. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "If someone finds you, they'll kill you. And me too." The woman looked at him, tears falling down her cracked face. "Then let them," she said weakly. "But please, let my child live." Ethan looked around. The wind howled through the ruins, the night growing colder. He could walk away, pretend he saw nothing, stay safe. But could he really live with that choice? He had seen enough death during the war, and now for the first time, he could save someone, even an enemy. Ethan sighed and finally reached out his hand. "Come with me," he said quietly. The woman stared for a moment, then nodded and tried to stand. Her legs shook, almost giving way. Ethan supported her, helping her walk back toward the outpost. As the heavy doors closed behind them, the silence of the outside world faded. He guided her to a small room filled with medical lights and machines. The baby whimpered again. Ethan gently placed the bundle on the table and looked. For medical supplies, there was nothing for Trillari biology. No food, no medicine that would work. He turned to the mother. "What's your name?" he asked. She whispered, "Asha Ren," then looked down at her baby. Ethan saw the way her hands trembled as she touched the child's cheek. She had lost everything. Her home, her husband, her people. Now even her milk was gone. Ethan stood in silence, staring at the helpless pair. Outside, lightning flashed across the red horizon. He felt the weight of the law pressing down on him, but something inside refused to stay cold. He had once been a soldier who destroyed lives. Maybe tonight he could be someone who saved one. The baby cried again, softer now, weaker. Ethan clenched his jaw and whispered, "Hang on, little one." He turned toward his tools and machines, mind racing with ideas. If there was no milk, maybe he could make something artificial, something that could feed life. As the storm roared outside, Ethan began his work. And deep in that dark outpost, for the first time in years, he felt purpose again. The storm outside had calmed, But inside the outpost, Ethan's mind was racing. The alien child lay inside a small glass cradle, breathing weakly. Asherin sat beside the table, her eyes half closed, whispering soft words in her language. Her voice was trembling, full of pain and hope. The machines hummed quietly around them, giving the place a faint blue glow. Ethan stared at his tools, wires, and broken medical parts. Nothing in the human database could help a Trellari baby. He tried searching through old medical files, but every result came up with the same warning. Interference with non-human life forms. Galactic violation, Article 47. Ethan sighed and rubbed his face. If he followed the law, that child would die before the next sunrise. If he broke it, he could be executed. He looked at the baby again, its tiny chest rising slowly, and he made his choice. He cleared the table and began working. Years of engineering and combat repair had taught him how to build things from scraps, but this was different. This was about life, not machines. He opened an old nutrient synthesizer and began modifying it. His hands moved fast, his heart pounding as he tried to balance chemical ratios. Asha watched him, silent at first, then asked softly, "Why are you helping us, human?" Ethan paused, his eyes fixed on the circuits. "Because no one helped us either," he said quietly. "When the war ended, I saw too many bodies, human and Trellari alike. We both bled red." Asha looked down, tears forming again. "My husband fought too," she said. "He never came back." Hours passed, and the outpost lights flickered as the storm returned outside. Ethan connected pipes, energy coils, and feeding tubes into a single small device. He called it the biosynth feeder. It was designed to mix artificial nutrients with oxygen, a kind of mechanical milk. It was untested, unstable, and illegal, but it was their only hope. The baby's cries grew weaker, and Asha's hands shook as she touched the child's face. "Please, human. He cannot wait," she whispered. Ethan took a deep breath and powered on the machine. A soft hum filled the room, followed by a light blue liquid forming in a small container. He carefully lifted a dropper and brought it close to the child's lips. The baby moved slightly, its mouth opening just enough to taste the liquid. Then, for the first time, it stopped crying. Asha gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Tears ran down her face as she looked at Ethan. "You did it," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Not yet," he said, checking the readings. "The system isn't stable. It could break down any time." But for that moment, hope had returned to the cold air. Hours later, Ethan sat in his chair, exhausted but proud. Asha and her child were both asleep now. The babies breathed. Nothing steady, he leaned back, staring at the ceiling. What had he done? He had just committed one of the greatest crimes in the galaxy, giving life to an alien. If the patrols found out, there would be no trial, no mercy. Still, he felt no regret, only a strange calmness inside. Suddenly, the communication console beeped, breaking the silence. Ethan's heart jumped. He rushed to the screen. It was an incoming message from his old commander, Captain Rains. "Engineer Cross," the voice said coldly. "Routine inspection of your outpost in 48 hours. Prepare all systems for review." Ethan froze. His stomach tightened as he looked toward the sleeping aliens. 48 hours. That was all he had before discovery. He turned off the screen and stood quietly for a long moment. Asha woke up, sensing his unease. "What is wrong?" she asked. "They're coming," Ethan said softly. "The human patrol. They'll be here in 2 days." Asha's face turned pale, her trembling hands holding her baby tighter. "Then they will kill us," she whispered. Ethan didn't answer, but his silence told her everything. That night he worked again, faster than ever. He needed to hide them, to protect them. He opened an old tunnel beneath the outpost, a forgotten passage once used for storage. He cleaned it out, filled it with blankets and supplies. When dawn came, the secret chamber was ready. Asha and the baby would stay there until it was safe. Before she went inside, Asha stopped and looked at Ethan, her voice soft but firm. "You risk your life for us, human. Why?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because no one should die just because the law says so." Asha bowed her head, whispering something in her language, a prayer or a blessing. Then she disappeared into the tunnel with her child. Ethan sealed the door, covering it with steel panels. He stood there for a while, listening to the quiet hum of the outpost. The forbidden help had begun. He looked out at the storm beyond the window, the lightning flashing across the sky, and he whispered to himself, "If to. Hey, want a lawbreaker? They'll find one." The next morning, the outpost stood silent under a red and golden sky. Ethan hadn't slept all night. He had spent every hour checking systems, building false data logs, and hiding traces of what he had done. Now, with only 40 hours left before the patrol ship arrived, he knew one mistake could destroy everything. Asha and her child were hidden deep beneath the floor, in the small tunnel he had turned into a safe place. She stayed quiet all day, afraid even her breath could give them away. Ethan brought her food and water through a hidden hatch, whispering instructions to stay silent. The baby, whom Asha called Tiro, slept peacefully now, small and fragile, but alive. Each time Ethan saw him, a strange warmth grew inside him. He had built machines all his life, but this was the first time something he created had truly saved a life. Still, peace was not something he could afford. He knew the biosynth feeder was temporary. It was feeding the child, yes, but it couldn't replace real nourishment. Soon, the baby would need something more, something that could keep his alien lungs and organs developing. That meant Ethan had to build again. He sat before his workbench, staring at blueprints glowing on the holoscreen. Lines of light formed a new design, a hybrid life support chamber. It would not only feed the child but also purify the air, regulate temperature, and mimic the heartbeat of a Trilari mother. Asha had told him that Trilari infants needed to feel a pulse. Without it, their hearts grew weak. That detail stayed in Ethan's mind. He didn't just want to keep Tiro alive. He wanted him to live. But every invention left a digital trace. If the Alliance detected strange energy signals from his lab, they would question it. He had to hide his work under fake maintenance codes. Each time he turned on a new tool, he outed the power through the outpost's old medical scanners. To the system, it would look like he was repairing broken equipment. To the law, nothing was wrong. Hours turned into days, and Ethan barely ate. He worked in silence, guided only by the soft hum of machines and Asha's quiet prayers below the floor. Sometimes when the stress became too much, he would open the hatch and look down. Asha would smile faintly at him, her eyes tired but full of faith. "Your hands make life human," she whispered once. Ethan didn't know how to answer. He wasn't a hero, he told himself. He was just fixing what war had broken. One evening, as he soldered the last piece of the hybrid chamber, the console beeped again. It was Captain Rains, earlier than expected. "Ethan Cross, this is Command Patrol 7, the voice said. "Our route has changed. We'll arrive in 12 hours. Ethan's heart stopped for a moment. 12 hours. Not 40, not 20, just 12. He cut the signal immediately and stared at the wall, feeling the weight of fear press down on him. He rushed to Asha, opening the hatch quietly. "They're coming sooner," he said, voice low but urgent. Asha's face went pale. "What will you do?" she asked, clutching her child. Ethan took a deep breath. "I'll hide you deeper, below the old oxygen tanks. They won't scan there." She nodded, trusting him without question. He carried the baby gently, wrapping him in a heat-resistant blanket. The small alien hand clutched his finger, and for a second, Ethan forgot the danger. That tiny hand gave him strength. He lowered them into the lower chamber, sealing the hatch again. Then he began cleaning every trace of his work. Tools, circuits, notes, everything. He left only the new machine, disguised as an air filter, hidden under a metal panel. The outpost now looked cold, empty, and innocent. But inside that emptiness, his heart pounded like thunder. When the patrol ship finally descended, the sky turned dark. A beam of white light flashed across the surface as it landed. Ethan stood near the main door, straight-backed and calm. He had faced enemies in battle before, but this felt worse. A battle against truth itself. Captain Rains stepped out, his silver uniform shining. "Inspection," he said sharply. "We've had reports of energy spikes here." Ethan smiled faintly. "Just the old machines, sir. They're falling apart faster than I can fix them." Rains nodded slowly, eyes cold and sharp. "Then let's take a look." As they walked through the outpost, Ethan felt sweat forming on his back. Every hum of a machine felt like a scream, every flicker of light, a threat. Rains checked the power readings, the console logs, and the air filters. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. He narrowed his eyes. "You've done a lot of work here, Cross." Ethan forced a smile, trying to make this place livable again. Rains nodded, then turned away. But at that exact moment, a faint sound came from beneath the floor. A soft cry, almost too small to notice. Ethan's blood ran cold. Rains froze, his head tilting slightly. "What was that?" he asked. Ethan's mind raced faster than ever. He coughed loudly, hitting a button on the control panel. A burst of static filled the room, covering the sound. "Sorry, interference from the generator," he said quickly. Rains frowned but didn't push further. After a few tense moments, he turned to leave. "Keep your systems clean, Cross. Next time, we might not warn you." And with that, he left. As the patrol ship disappeared into the sky, Ethan collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. He had survived. Barely. He opened the hatch once more. Asha looked up at him, eyes wide and full of tears. "Are we safe?" she asked. "For now," he said, his voice shaking. Then he looked at the hidden chamber. Glowing faintly in the dark, the secret project had survived, and deep inside Ethan knew the real war had just begun. The morning came heavy with silence. The air around the outpost was thick and still, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Ethan stood near the main console, his eyes fixed on the radar screen. A single bright dot glowed at the edge of the map, moving closer every minute. The human patrol ship was back, and this time it wasn't just a visit. He could feel it. Something was wrong. Last night's inspection should have cleared him, but the message he received at dawn said otherwise. Follow-up verification, suspicious activity detected, prepare for full audit. Those words burned into his mind like fire. Asha and her child were still hidden below, deep inside the reinforced storage chamber. He had sealed it tight, but no lock could stop a scanning probe. Ethan looked at the hatch beneath the floor. Through the steel, he could almost hear the faint hum of the life support machine he built. Tiro was alive, breathing softly. Asha had promised to keep him silent no matter what happened above. But Ethan knew children didn't understand silence. He wiped the sweat from his brow, pulled on his dusty jacket, and took one last breath. Outside, the patrol ship descended through the thin clouds. Its thrusters blew up a storm of ash around the base. The ground shook as it landed, and the ramp extended with a loud hiss. Captain Rains stepped out again, but this time, he wasn't alone. 2 soldiers followed behind him, their helmets glowing blue, scanning the area. Rains looked calm, too calm. "Cross," he said coldly. "You've been busy." Ethan forced a small smile. "Just keeping the systems alive, Captain." Rains didn't smile back. He handed Ethan a data pad. "Your outpost reported power surges again last night," he said. "Mind explaining that?" Ethan's throat went dry. He had rerouted all power through the medical grid to hide his project, but somehow the system had still flagged the anomaly. "I ran diagnostics on the medical pods," Ethan said quickly. "They drain energy when the filters clean themselves." Rains narrowed his eyes. "Is that so? Then show me." Ethan turned toward the lab, every step feeling heavier than the last. He led Rains through the narrow hallway, past the generator room, and into the main lab. The soldiers followed, scanning walls, panels, even the floor. The machines hummed softly, lights blinking. To anyone else, it looked normal, a quiet human lab on a dead world. But Ethan's heart beat like thunder in his chest. Rains walked to the console and started typing. Data filled the screen. Power graphs, temperature charts, oxygen levels. He studied them carefully. "These numbers," Rains muttered, "don't match your report." Ethan leaned forward, pretending to check. "Old sensors, Captain. They flicker sometimes," he said calmly. But Rains wasn't convinced. He turned to one of his soldiers. "Activate the bioscanner." Ethan froze. The soldier pulled out a small, orb-like device and placed it on the floor. A red wave of light spread across the room, sweeping through every surface. It would detect any organic life hidden within 30 meters. Ethan clenched his fists behind his back, trying to stay still. The scanner beeped once, then again. A small blip appeared on its display. Faint but real. Rains leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "Explain that," he said sharply. Ethan's mind raced faster than ever. He bent down and hit a panel near the power core. The sound of steam burst out, making the soldiers step back. "Faulty sensor," Ethan said, raising his voice over the noise. "The radiation below sometimes interferes with readings." He turned off the scanner quickly, pretending to protect it from damage. Rains frowned, but he couldn't argue. The interference on Valora was well known. Still, his suspect. Ion didn't fade. He looked around the lab once more, eyes sharp as knives. Then he noticed something strange. A small piece of silver cloth near the corner of the room. Asha's fabric, torn from her robe the night before. Ethan saw it too, but before Rains could bend down, he kicked the cloth under a machine. "Careful, sir," he said quickly. "Sharp edges there." Rains stood straight, giving Ethan a long, hard look. "Always so helpful, aren't you?" Before Ethan could answer, a faint sound came from the vent above. A soft, choking cough. Asha's child. The sound was so small, so innocent. But in that silence, it cut through the air like lightning. Rains's eyes went wide. He raised his hand, signaling the soldiers. "What was that?" he demanded. Ethan's blood turned to ice. He quickly slammed a nearby switch, and the outpost alarms began to ring. The lights flickered. Sirens wailed. "Pressure leak!" Ethan shouted. "Everyone out! Now!" The soldiers panicked, rushing toward the door as steam burst from the walls. Rains cursed and followed them, covering his mouth. Ethan turned the system to full overload, filling the room with smoke and noise. No one could hear anything over the chaos. When the door finally sealed shut behind them, Ethan collapsed, coughing. His lungs burned, but his mind screamed one thing. They almost found her. He waited until the air cleared and the alarm stopped. Then he ran to the hatch, pulling it open. Asha was there, holding Tiro close, her eyes filled with tears and fear. Ethan dropped to his knees. "It's okay," he whispered, breathing heavily. "They're gone." Asha's voice trembled. "How long until they return?" Ethan looked toward the sky through the cracked window. "Their report will say nothing," he said. "But they don't believe me." He looked at the glowing chamber beside her. The life machine he built, still running. He touched its side and whispered, "Ed, we need to finish this, Asha." Her eyes met his, full of silent understanding. Above them, the stars shimmered, cold, watching, and full of secrets. The inspection had ended, but the real danger had only just begun. The sky above Valora burned with streaks of orange and silver. The patrol ship had left, but peace did not return. Ethan knew Captain Rains didn't believe a word of his lies, the way the captain had looked at him before leaving. Cold, sharp, unblinking. It was a warning. Something in that man's eyes said, "I'll be back." Ethan stood at the main console, watching the power readings blink like tiny red hearts. Everything looked normal on the surface, but deep below, in the hidden chamber, the forbidden machine pulsed softly. It gave off a faint, rhythmic light. The heartbeat of a secret, and that secret was now the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. He had broken the Galactic Law. He had saved an alien child, and now the law would hunt him for it. 2 days later, the warning came. A message blinked across his screen, encrypted but shaky. It was from an old friend, a scientist named Dr. Vale. "Ethan, what did you do?" The message read, "The Enforcer Network is talking. Someone from the patrol filed an anomaly report. They're tracing power signals from your sector." Ethan's hands went cold. They were coming, and this time they wouldn't ask questions. He ran to the lower chamber, opening the hatch quietly. Asha looked up, her silver eyes wide. "Human, what's wrong?" she asked, clutching Tiro protectively. "They're coming for us," Ethan said, voice low and firm. "The Enforcers. They'll scan every inch of this planet. They'll kill you both." Asha's face went pale. "Then what will we do?" Ethan stared at the baby, now a little stronger, breathing steadily under the soft blue glow of the biosynth chamber. He couldn't let all this end here. He couldn't let the law erase something so pure. He touched the glass, whispering, "I built this to save him, but it's not enough anymore." He turned toward Asha, his eyes fierce. "We'll build something better, something that can keep him alive anywhere." The next hours were chaos and creation. Ethan opened every crate, pulled every wire, and started designing a new device. This one would be a portable life system, a combination of artificial lungs and nutrient supply. It would feed the child, breathe for him, and hide his alien energy signature, a machine built not just for survival, but for escape. Asha watched him work, amazed at his focus. He looked like a man possessed, his hands moving faster than thought. "Why do you fight for us, human?" she whispered. Ethan paused for a moment, staring at the glowing child. "Because once I fought to destroy your people," he said softly. "And I saw what that made me. A killer, not a human." He tightened the bolts on the machine and whispered, "This time, I fight to be human again." Outside, thunder rolled across the planet, but it wasn't from a storm. It was the sound of ships entering the atmosphere. The Enforcers had arrived, a dozen black vessels cutting through the sky like blades, their scanners lighting up the landscape with red beams. Ethan's monitor blinked rapidly. Multiple energy signatures detected. They were locking onto his coordinates. Asha's breathing grew fast, her voice shaking. "They found us." Ethan nodded grimly. He handed her a small device, the size of a heart, glowing faintly. "Take this," he said. "It's part of the new system. It will protect his life signals from scanners." Asha looked at him, her hands trembling. "But what about you, Adez?" Han smiled faintly, his eyes tired but strong. "I'll handle them," he said. "Someone has to keep them busy." He ran to the main console and sent false energy pulses across the desert. It would confuse the scanners, make them chase ghost signals. The ship split up, scanning multiple zones, but one of them, the largest, came straight toward the outpost. Ethan's chest tightened. He turned to Asha one last time. "When the ground shakes, that's your signal to run." She nodded silently, tears sliding down her face. Moments later, the Enforcer ship landed with a roar. Dust and light filled the sky as soldiers in black armor stepped out. Their helmets glowed red, scanning everything. Ethan walked out slowly, his hands raised. One of them pointed a weapon at him. "Ethan Cross, you are charged with biological interference and treason against the Galactic Law," the officer shouted. Ethan smiled bitterly. "I was expecting you," he said. Behind him, the outpost hummed louder. He had wired the backup reactor to overload. It would detonate just enough to block scanners for a few minutes. Enough time for Asha to escape. The soldiers surrounded him. "Where is the alien?" one demanded. Ethan looked straight at the officer and said quietly, "She's not here." Then he pressed the hidden switch on his wrist. The ground exploded with light and sound. Dust and fire filled the air, throwing the soldiers backward. Amid the chaos, Asha crawled through the tunnel, holding Tiro close. The new portable system glowed softly against the baby's chest, hiding his energy completely. Above them, alarms screamed through the burning outpost. Ethan's last transmission echoed faintly through her earpiece. "Run, Asha. Keep him alive." Asha didn't look back. She ran through the storm, tears mixing with the ash on her face. Behind her, the sky turned red as the outpost burned. The human who had defied. The law was gone, but his creation, his hope, was still breathing. And in that breath lived a future neither species could yet imagine. The flames from the explosion lit up the night sky like a second sunrise. The outpost was burning, metal and glass twisting in the heat. The enforcer ships circled above, searching for survivors. Their scanners flashed red across the dark wasteland. But in the tunnels below, Asherin ran with her child in her arms, her heart pounding like thunder. Dust filled her lungs, and every breath hurt. Behind her, the ceiling trembled, small stones falling as the explosions echoed above. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Her only thought was to keep moving. To keep Tiro alive. The small device on his chest glowed softly, hiding his energy. Ethan had built it with love and desperation, and now it was the only reason the enforcers couldn't find them. Up above, Ethan stumbled through the smoke, his clothes torn, his face bleeding. He had survived the blast, barely. The outpost was half destroyed, but still standing. He looked up at the sky. Dark ships hovering like vultures. He knew this was the end of his mission. But he also knew that somewhere beneath the ruins, Asha and her baby were escaping. That thought gave him strength. He limped toward the control tower, coughing from the smoke. Every console around him sparked and hissed. He used the last working terminal to open the emergency communication channel. The signal flickered and a voice came through. "Captain Rains." "Cross, what have you done?" Rains shouted. "You've destroyed government property, attacked enforcers, and violated every law in the treaty." Ethan laughed weakly, his voice rough. "I built something better than your laws, Captain," he said. "I built hope." There was silence on the line. Then Rains spoke again, softer this time. "You were a good soldier once, Ethan. Don't make this worse." Ethan looked around the ruined lab, smoke curling around him like ghosts. "It's already worse," he said, "because I saw what our war did, and I won't be part of it again." He ended the transmission and smashed the console. Then he turned to the door, the sound of boots echoing closer. Outside, black armored enforcers spread through the ruins, weapons glowing blue. They surrounded the tower, moving carefully through the smoke. Ethan grabbed a plasma rifle from the wall, its power cell blinking weakly. He checked the charge. Only a few shots left. He smiled sadly. "It'll have to do," he whispered. The first enforcer entered, shouting, "Drop your weapon!" Ethan fired before the words were finished. The beam hit the soldier square in the chest, sending him flying back. The others opened fire, blue bolts cutting through the air. Ethan ducked behind a console, returning fire with precision born from years of war. Each shot he made counted. Each one bought a few more seconds for Asha to get farther away. But he was only one man. The enforcers were endless. He felt a blast hit his side, pain spreading through his ribs. He fell to one knee, blood dripping onto the floor. Still, he smiled through the pain. He remembered the baby's cry, soft, fragile, alive. He remembered Asha's voice when she said, "You give life, human." And he whispered, "I'll protect that life till my last breath." Outside, the enforcers pulled back as a larger ship descended. Captain Rains stepped out, walking toward the flames. He watched as Ethan staggered out of the tower, holding his rifle like a broken flag. Rains raised his hand, signaling his men to hold fire. "Where is she?" Rains asked, his voice calm. Ethan smiled faintly. "Gone," he said. "Somewhere your laws can't reach." Rains sighed, stepping closer. "You're throwing away your life for them, for an alien child." Ethan's eyes burned with a strange light. "Not just for them," he said slowly. "For what we could be, if we ever learned compassion." Rains looked at him for a long time, his jaw tightening. "You've lost your mind, Cross," he said coldly. "No," Ethan whispered. "I finally found it." Rains raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Ethan reached behind his back and pressed the detonator. The ground beneath the tower began to rumble. The old reactors he had set earlier started to overload. Rains shouted for his men to retreat. Ethan stood still, looking up at the burning sky. The wind whipped through his hair, carrying ash and sparks. He thought of Asha running through the tunnels, holding the child close. He thought of Tiro breathing through the machine he built, and with a small smile he whispered, "Live for me, little one." The explosion lit up the horizon. A pillar of fire rose into the clouds, shaking the ground for miles. The Enforcer ships were forced to pull back, their scanners blinded by radiation. Deep below, Asha felt the earth quake. She held her child tighter, whispering prayers through her tears. She didn't have to ask what happened. She already knew. Ethan Cross was gone. The tunnels led her to the edge of a canyon where an old escape pod waited. Ethan had repaired it days ago, just in case. She stepped inside, trembling. The pod lifted slowly, breaking through the thick air. Through the small window, Asha looked back one last time. The world below burned, but from the flames rose a light. Bright and pure, she whispered softly, "Thank you, human," and the pod vanished into the stars. Years passed since the fire on Valora. The war that once tore through the stars had ended, but its scars remained on every planet. The Galactic Law had changed many times since then, but one rule stayed untouched. No human may interfere with alien life. Still, somewhere beyond the reach of those laws, a secret survived. A small escape pod drifting through the void, carrying the last trace of defiance, hope, and love. That pod had been found by a group of wanderers, traders and explorers from neutral worlds. Inside, they discovered a Trell. Ari woman and her child, both barely alive. The woman was weak, her skin pale, her voice soft, but she never let go of her son. When the rescuers tried to separate them, she whispered one name over and over, Ethan. The traders didn't understand who he was, but they saved her, and they saved the child. The years turned quietly after that. The boy, Tiro, grew up among the wanderers, learning both human and Trellari ways. He was different from all others. His eyes glowed faint blue, but his mind sharp as a human's. The traders called him the hybrid, a child of peace and rebellion. He never knew his father figure, but his mother told him stories. Stories of a human who broke the law to save an alien life. Stories of courage, of sacrifice, and of a heart that refused to obey hate. One night, when Tiro turned 16, he sat beside his mother under the glow of twin moons. He looked at her tired face and asked, "Mother, why did the human help us? He didn't even know us." Asha smiled sadly, her voice soft as starlight. "He didn't see an alien, my son," she said. "He saw life, something worth saving." Tiro looked down at the necklace around his neck, a small metal tag engraved with one word, Cross. The only thing left from Ethan. Time kept moving, as it always did. When Asha grew older and her health faded, Tiro became her strength. He studied medicine, science, and ancient engineering. He rebuilt Ethan's old device, the portable life system, and improved it. He used it not for war, but for healing. He traveled between worlds, helping both humans and Trellari children breathe and live. Every time he saved a life, he whispered a silent thank you to the man he never met. One day a message reached him, a call from the Human Alliance. They had heard of a healer who used forbidden technology. They wanted to arrest him. But when the officers arrived, they found something unexpected. Tiro wasn't running. He stood waiting for them in the middle of a refugee camp, surrounded by humans and Trellari families. Sick children slept in his care, breathing through small glowing machines, the same design that once saved him. The lead officer, a young woman, looked at him with disbelief. "These devices are illegal," she said. "You're breaking the law." Tiro looked at her calmly, his voice steady. "Then your law is broken," he replied, "because it cannot see the difference between helping and harming." The officer stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned off her scanner and said quietly, "Finish your work, doctor." From that day on, the story of the healer of two worlds spread across the stars. No one knew his real name. No one spoke of the human who made it possible. But legends whispered of a man who had once given everything for an alien child, a man who had turned war into compassion and compassion into legacy. Years later, Tiro returned to Valora. The world was still broken. Quiet ruins under a pale sky. He walked through the dust until he found the place where the outpost once stood. Nothing remained but metal bones buried under sand. Yet, in the center of it all, something still stood. A small statue of a man, half covered by dust. It was old and unmarked, but Tiro knew who it was. He knelt down before it, brushing the sand away from the face. It was Ethan Cross, the man who had saved him, the man who had died so he could live. Tiro's hands shook as he placed the metal tag. The necklace. At the base of the statue, he whispered softly, "You gave me life when the universe refused to." A gentle breeze moved through the ruins, carrying his words into the endless sky. He looked up at the stars, bright and silent, just like the night his mother had told him about. He could almost hear Ethan's voice in the wind, calm and warm. Be better than us, Tiro. And he smiled. For the first time, he understood what it meant to be human. Not flesh or blood, but choice. The choice to care, even when it costs everything. As the sun rose on Valora, its light touched both human ruins and alien soil. Two worlds, once enemies, now connected by one story, one act of kindness. In that moment, Tiro whispered his final vow. I will heal what war has broken. He turned away from the statue and walked into the morning light. Behind him, the metal tag glowed faintly, as if the name Cross was shining back from the stars. And far above, where silence met eternity, the spirit of a human smiled. Because in the end, humanity had not died. It had only changed its shape.